Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here, and welcome to my reviews of Doctor Who Season 17, starting with Story 1, Destiny of the Daleks. And correct me if I'm wrong, this is the first review, first season, or at least the first season since Season 6, where I'm going to open on a rant. Because Destiny of the Daleks, it's basically the Dalek equivalent of Revenge of the Cybermen. The Daleks are handled badly, and the story just looks cheap and looks like the budget has run out, and we're only one story in. I wonder if they ran out of budget because they did all that location filming for the next story. But I don't know. I think the sets and the props just look worn out, outdated. Yeah, they're supposed to look like they've been in war. The sets supposed to look like they're derelict after a 1,000-year war and the nuclear explosion, but it still looks tacky. Really, really tacky. It's more for the sets rather than the locations. It just looks really tacky, and it just had a uneasy edge to it. I just felt uncomfortable watching this story because it looks tacky. And the Daleks, oh my god, the Daleks are handled poorly. They don't know whether they want to be serious or comedic. And unlike The Chase, where they kind of merged the two really well, where the Daleks would be comedic in a few times but would remain would be just normal Daleks. This time they don't know what to do with themselves, and some of their dialogue is pretty bad, and it's just tacky. Apparently Douglas Adams, the script editor, wrote 98% of the story, so he basically took what Terry Nation, a story by Terry Nation, and basically changed the entire thing. It's basically the Nightmare in Silver situation, where Neil Gaiman wrote a story and then the script editor of Series 7, or somebody on the creative team, basically changed the story to be rewrote and changed it. But unlike how Robert Holmes did it for Pyramids of Mars and The Brain of Morbius, the complete rewrites did not fare well with audiences, nor with the writers, which is why Neil Gaiman hasn't returned yet to the series. And also Terry Nation declined offers to return to the series since after this, because this story was taken out of his hands and completely changed. His story wasn't going to feature K9 at all. Not sure why, but oh well. But they wrote it in so that K9 was unwell. So Roy Skelton provides his voice at the start of part 1, and they just explain K9 has meningitis somehow, but they try and explain K9's absence. Okay, fair enough. You don't have to have K9 in the story, and it's an odd way to say that he's not in the story, but get him out. But all right, we'll buy it. What I can't buy is Romana changing her incarnations to best fit her second self. I'm sorry if you can hear any noises outside. The thing is, with Romana... Shut up! The thing is, with Romana changing, trying on different bodies, means she's using up more of her regeneration energy. So we first meet her after regenerating from Mary Tam into Lana Ward. Apparently Mary Tam was up for a regeneration scene, but she wasn't invited, a bit like with Colin Baker into Sylvester McCoy in Time the Rani. Maybe there's a Big Finish audio out there that they were planning to do with Mary Tam before her passing that would have seen her regenerate into Lana Ward. There's some really good fan edits out on YouTube you can try and find. But now Lana Ward is now the second incarnation of Romana, although why she's dressed like Princess Astra, I don't know. Maybe she's just trying out the costume. And the Doctor tells her to try another face. So then we get 3 different incarnations of Romana. So Romana tries on 3 more bodies. None of them work, and then she tries on the same body she regenerated into in the first place, just wearing the Doctor's clothes, and then later changing it to outfits that is similar to his. You know, this isn't how regeneration works, Terry Nation / Douglas Adams, or whoever. I think this was one of Douglas Adams' rewrite scenes, and a new inclusion comes to that. Douglas Adams, this isn't how regeneration works. Go and talk to Robert Holmes about it, because he understands regeneration, because he came up with he didn't come up with the concept of regeneration, but he came up with the rules. And yeah, so go and talk to Robert Holmes. So basically, we get a big slap in the face of what we know of regeneration up to this point, with Romana just trying on bodies like their different outfits. So technically, the Romana that Lana Ward plays from the point of once after going through the other 3 tries, that she's technically the 6th Romana, technically the 6th incarnation. So Romana 2 is actually Romana 6, apart from the first scene with her where she was Romana 2, and then once she goes off to try the other bodies, we then get 3, 4, and 5. So and then after that, it's Romana 6. Does that mean the Romana 3 from the Big Finish Gallifrey audios that was then later erased from history to Lana Ward's incarnation would still be the current one? Does that mean she's Romana 7 instead of Romana 3? Well, if Romana 2 is Romana 6, then yes. So yeah, Romana 2 is actually Romana 6, apart from in her first scene or 2, because that's when she does directly regenerate into from Mary Tam to Lana Ward. And the reasoning is not really given, she just decides to regenerate, like that Time Lord in Invasion of Time asked another Time Lord, isn't it time you regenerated? But for that guy's point of view, you could see he was getting quite old and his body was wearing out, so he'd probably regenerate just to stay around. With Romana, it's not really given an explanation. There are theories that from being exposed to the key to time, it damaged her body, a bit like how Mondas wore out the first Doctor's body. Another theory is that there's this Time Lord, there was this powerful Time Lady who was president for a bit, and then and Romana is some sort of descendant or reincarnation. Not reincarnation as in regenerating, as in reincarnated, like what humans believe happens after people die and they are reincarnated as someone else or something else. Spirit animal, for example. And so that's a theory that Romana is somehow linked to this the Imperatrix, or aka Pandora. And Romana 1 looks like her a lot, and to avoid becoming her again, somehow she regenerates into Romana 2. Whatever the reason, it's not explained, and she's just decided to regenerate, basically. And then and I really don't like the idea of her just trying these other bodies on. The first scenes in the TARDIS with all this happening, and the canine lemonitis stuff, and just landing on the planet and wondering, where are we? It takes about 5 to 5.5 minutes, so that's 5.5 minutes dedicated to nothing. I mean, apart from the canine lemonitis stuff, and also them wandering around. I mean, those bits they're fine, but Romana regenerating, okay, fine. She's regenerated, and now she needs to try out some new clothes. Cool. Because the Doctor says she can't run around looking like Princess Astra, so she'll just change the clothes. But changing the other bodies, that's not how regeneration bloody works. And also she regenerates back into the Astra lookalike body, which, according to Born Again, the 2005 Children Need Special, the 10th Doctor says he cannot regenerate back into the 9th Doctor. So, yeah, Russell T Davies understands regeneration better than Douglas Adams. I'm sorry, but it's true. I mean, you can regenerate back into the same... I mean, Russell wrote the 10th Doctor regenerating into the same incarnation in Stolen Earth, fair enough. Although it was Stephen Moffat who made that second 10th Doctor an official incarnation as opposed to a separate incarnation to the one beforehand, and therefore being the 12th life as opposed to the 10th Doctor just being the 11th life. But I can believe the Doctor, or any Time Lord, regenerating into the face they were already wearing, but it's still another life lost. That I can believe, but regenerating into a face they've already worn, that I can't believe. Although that was hinted in the Day of the Doctor with the caretaker, but that might be different circumstances. For starters, it'd be after several hundred thousand years, and going back through old favourites. And second of all, the creator looks like he's older anyway, so they might regenerate into an older version, or even younger versions who live out the whole life. And thirdly, it's not confirmed that the creator is the Doctor. And whilst with Destiny of the Daleks, the Romanas regenerate simultaneously. They pretty much every other half minute from when she goes off to try the incarnation, the new bodies. Pretty much every other half minute she's regenerating, and yet this slaps in the face of what we know before and what we will learn after on. So yeah. So this scene, not only is it pointless, it's ridiculous and it damages the fan base. It's fun, but unlike other fans, I can't forgive it. And we thought Stephen Moffat making that 10th Doctor, after regenerating into himself, a separate incarnation to what he was before, was stupid. Wasn't as bad as this. Godness, Romana, why? Why Douglas Adams? Why Terry Nation if you also had some sort of involvement with it? Because he's got the name on it. Terry Nation's got his name on it. But apparently 98% of the story is Douglas Adams. So I'm actually going to be blaming Douglas Adams more. And even if that isn't correct, he was still the script editor. He should have known better. And yeah, there's quite a bit of comedy in this story, and that definitely goes down to him. Then, whilst there are bits that are good, like the Doctor reading a book that was written by one of Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy characters, there is quite a lot of comedy that doesn't quite work. And on top of that, I think the direction is bad. I think it's a bad directed story. A bad script is made worse by a bad story. Direction, and I think the direction actually makes the story even worse. At least the story has its problems, but it could be redeemed with a good. It's not terrible. It's not a terrible story. It's just not that good. It's just quite a lot of dialogue and some plot points. But the direction makes it worse. There is some really bad filming and editing. In part 3, for example, there's a bit where there's a Dalek and there's some shots of Romana and shots of Tyson trying to distract the Dalek, but there's not really much indication of where the characters are within each other. To be honest, Romana looks like it's closer to the Dalek's closer to her, and she's looking at it basically straight on, like I'm looking at you straight on, and you are the Dalek. I'm Romana, you are the Dalek. It's sort of looking like that, in a way. And Tyson is over there and behind you in the corner, and yet the Dalek fires at him. The direction in this story and the cinematography isn't that great. This is pretty weak. And the Moonvalens, they're not a very good designed monster. Look, as Mr. TARDIS Review says in his review, they look like a Boney M tribute. Although I am glad they got some black actors in for some of these characters, and also for some of the slaves. But it does make black actors look like in a negative light, for the most part, possibly. So yeah, black actors would have to wait a few more years till they got better representation. I mean, the Movalens aren't terrible, but they're not that great either. And they turn out to be a race of robots. Okay, fair enough, but then we get a problem. The plot of this story involves the Daleks having to try and find Davros to help them reset their logic computers against the Movalens. And everyone is claiming the Daleks to be another race of robots. Oh, the Daleks are cyborgs! Terry Nation wrote them as cyborgs. He wrote them as mutants inside a metal tank. Did he forget about Genesis the Daleks? Oh, okay, maybe it was Douglas Adams. Maybe Douglas Adams forgot about that bit. Because I'm sure Terry Nation wrote the story element. So the Daleks were fighting the Movalens in a war and they need to reset their computers. And they need Davros to help them. Maybe that was his story. And then Adams just took it and changed quite a lot of aspects of Dalek lore, as well as Time Lord lore, as I've just been talking about. But yeah, it doesn't work. The Daleks are cyborgs, and they don't always, whilst they would rely on logic, not as much as the Cybermen, but they would also think outside the box. They would decide what they should do, and whilst they do feel anger and hate as emotions, they have a few emotions: hate, fear, and anger, and they would put those emotions to use as part of their plans, whether it's logical or not. Mostly logical, but not always. But here they're being designed to be looking like robots. There's even a brief mention of the Daleks being originally organic life forms. But now they seem to be just robots. That sucks. If this story hadn't featured the Daleks, as Mr. TARDIS review said, then it would have been a bit better. It's a completely separate race. But no, this story features the Daleks, and they ruined them. They ruined the Daleks. This is the story where I believe this is the story where the Daleks became parody. Because this story does treat them like a parody, as opposed to previous stories which actually treated them seriously, even in the comedic section, comedic scenes. And yeah, this is probably where Dalek reputation from being a massive pop icon and one of the biggest Doctor Who villains in the show. It's this story that I believe turned them into a joke. And this reputation, despite attempts to make the Daleks more serious and more dangerous and more threatening in their 1980s stories, this reputation would stick until 2005, when the Daleks were finally made the force to be reckoned with 2005's Dalek and Bad Wolf and the Parting of the Ways. Oh, sweet Jesus, those two stories came to the rescue. As much as I love Remembrance of the Daleks a lot, and Resurrection of the Daleks and Revelation of the Daleks are also really great, they don't save the Daleks' reputation. They're great stories. They redeem the Daleks after this story, but they don't save the reputation. And whilst the reputation isn't as bad in the 80s or 90s, it's still really tarnished. It's only once we get to 2005 that the Daleks are made to be a force to be reckoned with once again. Thank God Robert Sherman and Russell T Davies and Helen Rayner know how to write Dalek stories. And I'm talking Helen Rayner as a script editor, not as a writer. As for Davros himself, although David Giderson tries his best to play Davros after Michael Wisher was unavailable due to theatre work in Australia, but the mask is the same mask that Wisher used, and it clearly doesn't fit Giderson. He struggles to perform underneath it, and he struggles to perform in the limitations. And there are some really easily noticeable moments where it seems that he has to roll along his chair, and also some of the Dalek props, because of they're so battered and worn out and outdated. Some of the people as well as that, some people have to adjust them, and some others jump forward to get started. And for some reason, apart from one of them, they're all this slightly lighter grey colour as opposed to the darker grey that we've seen in past Dalek stories. There is one of them still around, though. I think that's the one that stays behind, the leader, I suppose. But they have this slightly lighter grey colour, and I don't think it looks as nice. I'm not really the biggest fan of the gunmetal grey colours of the 70s and 80s, but this type of light grey isn't that great. So I'd rather it was those gunmetal grey, dark grey coloured Daleks that we saw in the previous stories, minus Death to the Daleks. All those Daleks brought back, those were nice design. Like I said, Goodison does his best, but given a lot of limitations as Davros, he's easily the weakest of the actors as well, because I think other actors do try their best later on. Terry Molloy and Julian Bleach, as well as Michael Wisher, they all do their best, but Goodison still does a good performance. Like with how I was talking about Philip Maddox's performance in Power of Kroll. Power of Kroll is his weakest performance, but he still does a great job there. And I think David Goodison, whilst he's the weakest Davros, he still does a good job as Davros. And as for Tom Baker and Lana Ward, well, I read some reviews saying that on Wikipedia that Lana Ward had been a bit had been criticised, or at least not the critics didn't find her performance very good, but I honestly thought Lana Ward did a great performance as Romana. It's her first time as this character, not Astra. She's playing Romana for the first time, and I think she hits it out the park. I think she does a good job. There is a bit where the character is backed up against the wall by some Daleks, and they just screaming, "Do not move! Do not move! Do not move! Do not move! You are our prisoner!" And so on until they finally decide to stop. And that is a very unthreatening scene, by the way. It's supposed to be the first episode's cliffhanger, and it's unthreatening. And Romana is then sent to work as one of the prisoners in the mining out to try and find clearing up after the machinery works. But Ward, I do believe, does a great performance as Romana in this story. So I'm not sure why some people didn't think she had, but certainly I certainly think she did a great job here. If we minus that whole stuff with the regeneration, then I think Romana is a great character in this film, and Ward does a great job with her. So I'm already liking Romana too. In fact, I think I like her more than Romana 1 at this point. Sorry, Mary Tam. But yeah, she gets kidnapped again though. That's in trouble, I should say. In trouble again for the 7th fucking time. God's sake. As for Tom Baker, he's always great. He's once again brilliant. He's brilliant performances, both comedic and also when he's trying to be he's pretty comedic in this story. There isn't that much seriousness throughout, but he's still fun to watch. I think Tom Baker can pull off comedy really well. Alongside Matt Smith, he can pull off comedy brilliantly. Different type of comedy, I would say, though. And I think the comedy here for the Doctor works well. It's other areas where the comedy doesn't quite work, like the Daleks. But the Fourth Doctor is once again brilliant and has some great stuff to do, and Tom Baker does a brilliant job. And Tyson, he's a good character. The actor who plays him is good, and he was deaf at the time recording this story. He's a really good actor because when he couldn't hear what was going on, so he'd have to read the lines, read the lips, or maybe some auto cubes. So he did a great job, and he beats the character in Before Under the Lake and Before the Flood as being the first deaf person in a Doctor Who story, first deaf actor. The character's not deaf, but the actor was deaf. Though that character in Under the Lake Before the Flood would be a deaf character and use that as an advantage at one point. That disability as an advantage at one point. There's not really much else I can say. This story is a bit of a mess as well in terms of... the story basically is simple, but the whole concept is a bit of a mess. So, yeah, that's Destiny of the Daleks. A complete and utter letdown. I mean, there are some positives, such as Tom Baker, Lana Ward, and the guy who plays Tyson. He's really good. And David Goodison tries his best as Davros. And whilst he's the weakest of the Davros actors, at least on screen, or maybe excluding the boy from Magician's Apprentice, which is familiar, but for the main Davros actors, he's probably the weakest. But he still he did his best shot at the limitations he's got, and some nice model work as well. But the story pretty much suffers. The budget seems to have run out already. The Daleks are battered and bruised. It looks hokey and clunky. The Daleks are also made to be robots, instead full-on robots with no organic material, and B, they're subjected to logic, although some of this logic is ignored, as they say they want to self-preservate them, therefore sacrifice impossible, and then in part 4 they're sent to blow themselves up to destroy the Magellan ship. And C, they're made to be a fucking parody. And the Muvallans themselves, whilst a good idea, good design, good creature, the story that surrounds them isn't that great. So, Destiny of the Daleks, I think, is an absolute letdown. Concerning the Daleks, at least. I mean, some elements would have been good. And, yeah, this story is an absolute letdown for the majority. I did think part 1 was a good mystery setup, wondering what's going on, but once the Daleks got introduced, it went downhill. So I'm going to give Destiny of the Daleks a 4 out of 10. Arguing whether to do 5, I wasn't certain. I didn't want to copy Mr. TARDIS review score, which was 4 out of 10. But in honesty, I have to agree with him for the most part. This is a massive... He didn't say it was a massive letdown, but I found it a massive letdown. And to me, this is where the Daleks became a joke. Instead of a pop culture icon, they became a joke. A reputation they would hold for another 26 years until a magnificent revival. Thankfully, there will be 3 more Dalek stories in the classic era that would redeem the reputation, redeem the Daleks themselves. But the reputation, as far as the general public are concerned, has turned into a joke until 2005. So we're just going to have to wait till Dalek for the Daleks' reputation to be restored and back in glory. But thankfully, we've still got 3 great Dalek stories to look forward to. But the next one's not going to be until after another 5-year break. 5-year break with 1984's Resurrection of the Daleks, minus a cameo in Logopolis and one in The Five Doctors. But excluding, and apparently there was supposed to be one in Sharda, but I didn't see it in the animated 2017 animated versions. They might not have done that one. Saw Sideman's head though. But yeah, so the next Dalek story will be Resurrection of the Daleks. Almost at the end of Peter Davison's run. Well, that story was supposed to be in season 20, but due to a fucking strike, it was pushed back a season. God's sake! Maybe there would have been another one earlier on, before that, if Terry Nation had agreed to come back, but he didn't, and so the next time the Daleks would be used, and this time under another script editor, one who knew what he was doing with the Daleks, it would be 5 years later. It'd be a great return, but it would be 5 years later. At least we've got the return of the Cybermen and the Master to look forward to in the meantime. Oh well, that's the Destiny of the Daleks. Worst classic Dalek story, and one of the worst Dalek stories, full stop. Not the worst, I think there's worse coming in the new series. One in particular that I think is even worse from Series 7. But certainly for classic series, it's the worst. And I thought Mission to the Unknown wasn't anything special. So, at least that one, the Daleks were great in that story, and the supporting characters were actually pretty decent. Anyway, so that's fucking Destiny of the Daleks. That's all gone. What a great way to start off Season 17. If only the next story could be a masterpiece, then the season could be... Next time, City of Death! Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel. Oh, for goodness sake. Hang on, I'm closing the windows. So Romana has... Goodness, I'm starting to wish Robert... I'm starting to wonder if Robert Holmes going on his break was now a good idea. If some of his... Let's just cap that. That's not good. No. Bastard. but this isn't a very good. But it does make them. But it does highlight them in a negative way. Blackadder's, but it does signal negative vibes from. So, yeah, black actors would have to wait a few more stories till they got better representation. Good to see. Thought you'd be dead. I did tell they. Fuck. It's concerning where at least with the Daleks, at least